All right, so you vetted a search firm and you found a true specialist who could scour the entirety of the local SAP market. And you, your team, and your candidates have gone through the long and arduous gauntlet of the initial assessment, the competency interview, multiple DNA interviews, and a half-day test drive or working interview. And you think you found the one. Not the one like Neo from the Matrix, although that would be a lot cooler, but a candidate with a pedigree to die for, who says all the right things, walks the walk, basically a rock star who's head and shoulders above everybody else. And you're thinking, boom, let's make this hire. You call HR, you say, we've got a winner, check the references, make the offer. And then you think, hey, my job's done. In your mind's eye, you already see this rock star outperforming their peers, making it look golden to senior management for your innate ability to recruit the very best talent. But I advise you to pump the brakes because you're about to make the biggest rookie mistake of them all. This is David Stephan Patterson. I am the SAP recruiter. And today I'm going to show you that the reference calls that your recruiter is about to make on your behalf are completely and utterly useless. And worst of all, they can shoot you in the foot. And I'm going to show you how you should be doing them so you can avoid a potentially career-ending hiring mistake. Now, I want to set the stage here. Leadership IQ conducted a 3-year study, 5,214 managers, 312 organizations, and over 20,000 hired employees. They found that over 18 months, 46% of those hires were found to be mishires. And there's several studies that show the same numbers. Think about it. That's a flip of the coin. And if bringing on a mishire on a critical position can derail your leadership career, this is literally worse than the odds of Russian roulette. And that's not all. So there's a study by the University of Massachusetts that found that 81% of people lied about themselves during job interviews. And the ones who did told an average of 2.19 lies per 15-minute interview. So if you do the math, in 81% of all the interviews you've ever conducted in the span of your leadership career, you've been spoon-fed close to 9 lies in every hour of interview time. That's crazy when you think about it. So when you hand the candidate's reference list to your HR recruiter or the outside recruiter who submitted the candidate in the first place, yeah, they'll be objective. It's critical that you take one last hard look at your top choice candidates, and you do so through a rigorous reference checking process. Now, with that said, the problem with contemporary reference checks is that they're useless. They've long since lost their value in the recruitment process, and they become nothing more than a check-the-box exercise. Now, sure, the idea to validate a candidate's experience and accomplishments makes sense on the face of it. But the way they're done now is just simply become a zero-value, time-wasting exercise. So much so, most of the time, most hiring decisions are made before the references are even done. That's crazy, but it happens all the time. It's why most hiring managers don't even make the calls themselves, because they don't take the calls seriously, right? And unfortunately, this is a grave mistake that can cost you your career, because no matter how awesome your external recruiter is, and if your external recruiter is the Kineta Group, well, that's about as good as you'll ever get. I digress. But no matter how great your recruiter is or how rigorous your interview process is, you'll never really be sure if they can really perform the job as well as they say they can, right? Even if they ace the test drive. Look, bottom line, a bad candidate can still slip through. And on a critical position, think of the damage a bad hire can do to you. And even with all the interviewing techniques I described in my Bulletproof interview video, so if you haven't watched it, go check it out. The very last thing you really need to do to almost guarantee your hiring decision is what I call a backdoor reference. Now, I get this is a bit of a controversial topic, and I guarantee I'm going to get some of you that are going to throw flack at me for this. But the reality is, the reference list given to you by the candidate is no better than a list of paid endorsements. Their references have been told what to say, how to say it, they've been coached, and look, they're going to put the candidate in the best possible light. Sure, you might get a negative comment, but it's usually something like, oh, sure, Susie's biggest weakness is her over-dedication to her work. Really? It doesn't really tell you anything. Now, that's not to say that you shouldn't call those references, but bottom line, you have to take everything they say with a grain of salt, actually a boulder of salt. So the alternative is run a quick search on LinkedIn, track down the candidate's past direct managers, and call them. I mean, obviously confidentially, but you want to ask them to assess their past employees' experience. And keep in mind, these people weren't expecting a reference call. And they're not being prepped with talking points. So I guarantee you'll get an infinitely more honest and useful response than from any of their provided references. And with LinkedIn, it's becoming more and more easy to find the people that you want to talk to. Now, I'm sure you're probably thinking to yourself, David, is this even ethical? Well, let me ask you, would asking a mutual acquaintance for their opinion on a candidate you're about to hire be unethical? No, not at all. And with LinkedIn, our professional world is shrinking. There's a better than even chance that you know, or at least that you're connected to people who have valuable information on your candidate. And even if you can't find a mutual connection, reach out anyway. Look, just don't forget to stress the confidential nature of the candidate's job search and of the call itself. Just keep in mind, particularly with passive candidates, you absolutely cannot put them at risk with their current employer. Meaning, do not call the candidate's current employer. Don't call their boss, okay? It should go without saying, but sadly, I've seen it happen, and it is not pretty. Now, before you ask, yes, backdoor references are 100% legal, but with that said, check the laws in your local area. Now, let's talk some ground rules. Now, the first ground rule is I want you to focus on recent direct managers, only within the last 5 or 10 years at most. You see, only a manager can really tell you if they met expectations. Only a manager can tell you how that candidate compared to others, or if the candidate presented any difficulties, the impact they made on the bottom line. And as a rule of thumb, by the way, if a candidate's reference list is missing the majority of their former direct managers, that's a huge red flag. Right? And don't let them tell you, I've lost contact with my prior manager. In today's world of LinkedIn, that excuse does not hold water anymore. Now, second ground rule is make sure you do not pass off the responsibility to your internal HR or even worse, your outside contingency recruiter, like they won't be biased. This is your hire. The buck stops with you. And if this candidate who you envision will skyrocket your career ends up being a dud, your future you would have given anything to be able to go back in time and implore your younger self to do just a little bit more due diligence. It's that important, guys. I do want to make one note here. If you're working with a contingency recruiter, realize they have a built-in bias. It's not their fault, it's just the way the system works. Because they don't get paid unless their candidate is hired. And savvy candidates know this, which is why the recruiters represent the candidate, okay? Because the contingency recruiters are competing against the internal recruiter and the other contingency recruiters, and they don't get paid unless the candidate's hired. So guess where their loyalty lies? It's very important that you realize this. That's why oftentimes you get that feeling that your contingency recruiter represents the candidate even though you're the one footing the bill, okay? It's a screwed up system, but that's for another video. I digress. Anyway, a semi-exception to this HR rule would be HR senior leadership because they do have an intimate knowledge of what it takes to succeed at your organization, right? Or you can use a seasoned, engaged, or retained recruiter because they don't have that built-in bias and they don't have to worry about the competition and they're incentivized or they've got skin in the game because they usually have extended guarantees, like my 1-year guarantee, for example. So with that said, though, no matter if you do get an HR a seasoned HR leadership or seasoned engaged or retained recruiter to help you. At the end of the day, we're just here to help. You have to do them yourself. So make the time. It will save your hide. Third rule, and this is an important one, do not make the hiring decision until references are done. Every single one. I don't care how much this rockstar blew you away in the interview process, until you've done your due diligence and you've validated the candidate's experience with a third party, with several third parties, you're still playing Russian roulette with your career. You see, the best interviewers are oftentimes the worst performers. Not all the time, but it happens quite a lot. It's oftentimes because they get a lot of interviewing practice. And reference checks are where they're found out. So no matter how tempting a candidate may be, resolve to never, ever, ever make your hiring decision until after every single reference is complete. Okay? Even if all those references do is solidify your opinion of that candidate. You see, the 1 time out of 20 that you dodge a bullet by uncovering a deceitful candidate makes the hassle of reference checking and hiring those other 19 recruiters or candidates well worth it, okay? Now, the next rule, ground rule, is to ask high impact questions, not those standard reference questions that most ask. They're stock. So you want to ask questions that relate specifically to the competencies and the DNA required for the role. You have to be strategic with your questions, and you have to really dig in. Ask questions that most interviewers don't ask, and ask questions that have no easy answer. All right, you got to put your Sherlock Holmes cap on and dig for the truth. All right, you have to be blunt. Now, I'll have some examples for you to use here in just a few minutes. And of course, the fifth and the final ground rule is that the more senior the position, the more thorough the referencing has to be. As the level of responsibility rises, so do the stakes. And quite frankly, a mishire in the executive ranks can have a disastrous impact on the trajectory of your company. Also, consider executives are usually a lot more highly skilled at selling their experience in a compelling way. And besides, it's exponentially more difficult and costly to remove an executive mishire than a mishire from the rank and file. Which is why I recommend for most candidates, 3 to 4 references will suffice, but for senior executives, you should do between 6 to 8. And by the way, if calling just 3 to 4 references seems like a lot, then you're not calling enough references. So with that said, let's get to the high impact questions. All right, and we'll use the fictitious candidate Marty McFly of Back to the Future fame. So here we go. First question, did Marty report directly to you? And what portion of his tenure at the company did he report to you? And who else did Marty report to? Tell me about the role he was in. Or you can ask, the role we're hiring for requires these competencies, and just go write down your scorecard. How would Marty rate on those competencies? To the best of your knowledge, did Marty resign or was he asked to leave? What was his biggest quantifiable accomplishment? What was his biggest failure? What was his biggest challenge? And by the way, when you ask these questions, check the answers against the candidate's answers in the competency interview. Remember, you're asking the same questions of the candidate. So you need to validate that and check against the references answers. Very important. But remember, you have to dig. Marty mentioned accomplishment. Okay, what was his actual role in that? Was he solely responsible, or was it a team effort? How did Marty compare to the rest of the staff? What could have he done differently to be more effective? How would you describe his leadership style? What did Marty's staff think of him? Or you can ask, look, we're really impressed with Marty, and if we decide to make him an offer, how would you suggest I manage him to get the best performance? On a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being the highest, how strong is your referral? And if it's less than 10, and it almost always is, ask why not a 10? And keep asking why, until they run out of answers. That is how you properly conduct a reference check on a candidate. And the benefits are obvious, right? Avoiding a mishire. But you also get the added benefit of adding to your own personal Rolodex. And look, these may be your future hires for yourself, or they may lead you to your next opportunity. Believe me, it is worth it, no matter how much of a pain in the butt they may be. and they are, but make the damn calls. Now, in this video, I mentioned things like scorecards, competency interviews, DNA interviews, test drives, or working interviews. Now, if that all sounded like gobbledygook, then click down below, right down there, to download the SAP Rockstar Blueprint. This is a step-by-step guide to eliminating mishires, building top-performing teams, and crushing all expectations. Bottom line, if you want to learn all the ins and outs of hiring, which is arguably the most important job that you'll ever have, okay, and it's the key to your future success as a leader, particularly if you want to make it into the corner office or if you want to stay there if you already have made it, okay, then this guide is a must. This is a sorely needed book in our industry because, quite frankly, no one is teaching leaders like yourselves how to hire effectively, and it's killing careers. And I want to change that. But think about this. If you earn the reputation as a leader who can consistently field a team of top 10% performers, regardless of economic environment, regardless of company, you'll be able to write your own ticket. But it starts right here. And if you need additional help, whether you're a leader looking to take your career to the next level, or if you absolutely need a rock star on your team right now, then you could book a call with me directly. Now, we'll assess what you're doing now, what's working, what's not working, and I'll let you know if we can help. Now, even if you're not the right fit for us, or maybe we're not a right fit for you, that's okay. I'll still make sure that you walk away with the actionable strategies that you can use in your hiring tool bag today. So with that said, I look forward to chatting with you, and here is to hiring your next SAP Rockstar.